I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much.
Good.
Excited to be here on a Monday.
What a beautiful day it is out there.
It really is nice, yes. I
threw
love it.
I threw my bike on the back of the truck. I think I'm going to play hooky this afternoon.
Nice.
Oh, I like it, Keith.
Sounds like a good day.
Judah Wickhauer, the esteemed director. And Judah, we can rock and roll when you're ready. Things look good, my friend. Good Monday morning, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk with Keith Smith. Thank you kindly for joining us. A Martin Luther King Monday. We certainly understand the significance of the day and the holiday here at Real Talk with Keith Smith and the I Love CVille Network. Start with honoring Dr. Martin Luther King there. Judah Wickhauer, our director. We have to highlight him as well, audio and visual, thanks to the gentleman, the scholar, the friend, Judah Wickhauer. Today's show is going to be good. You, the viewer and listener, can join us for the discussion by shaping it with thoughts in the comment section. Keith Smith has put together a fantastic panel on a Monday.
Actually, shout out to Nikki. Nikki's the one that helped us with this one today, putting this together, reaching out to Woody. So thank you, Nikki,
Fantastic.
for helping us put this together. I've been, once I hit 60, I was a little slower. Got a little slower.
That's what it is.
That's
Totally.
Totally what it is. Yeah, so I love these shows. I love doing them when we, like I said, and the run-in on it before the cameras went live. I get to sit back and listen to some experts and interject a little bit, but I'm excited about it. So, again, we'll just, our normal thing. Nikki, give a quick intro, then we'll go over to Woody and get into it.
All right. Good morning. I'm Nikki Chambliss, Keller Williams Alliance team leader, keeper of Peace Magic and all things real estate.
Oh, very nice.
Did you say peace?
Peace
Peace
Magic.
and Magic.
I just made it up. I'm not sure that was a good.
I love that title. I love that title.
As a team leader, that may be
It
more
could-
true.
I mean, right? I
That
don't
may
know.
be actually the
I
truth.
like that.
It felt right in the moment.
She is a Renaissance woman. She's a musician. She's a mom. She's a champion of Central Virginia.
Yes.
She is turned into just a great broadcaster. And she joins us a few times a month here on Real Talk with Keith Smith and genuinely has really contributed to the program.
Without doubt.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And she's also, you're a biker, right? You got
But
your
you
cycle.
were going on with the M's. I thought you were going to pop
Want me to keep
motorcyclist
going?
in there.
Motorcycle?
I was like, no, it's
Have you taken it out lately?
No,
I didn't think so.
I'm a fair weather rider.
little cold.
It's
Yeah,
too cold.
The first thing I did this morning, I got up, I looked at my weather app, and I went, okay, 55. I'll do a bike ride this afternoon.
Give
so.
me some 60s and sun,
Yeah.
and I could definitely hop out on the ride.
Woody,
Yeah.
introduce yourself, sir.
Woody Fincham with Fincham & Associates. We're a local Central Virginia valuation firm. We do consulting and appraisal work for both residential and commercial now. And we really enjoy looking at a lot of real estate data. Bit of a nerd about it, but love it.
Well, you're on the right show. Because we like the real estate data here, don't we?
Without a doubt. And I spent some time and sent that out to everybody. We're going to kind of tackle Fluvanna County today. But I'd like to kick off a little bit how we ended last Friday's show, Jerry, if you don't mind. The reassessments, right? Woody, this is something right in your wheelhouse.
Yep.
I think they've according to the NBC 29 article, there's about 13% increase across the board, I think, on it. But I'd love to try to kick it off, I do this triangle explanation of why assessments are important, but can you do me a favor and just walk folks through exactly how this process goes and why the reassessment is so important in the whole budget and tax rate setting process?
So unless things have changed since I was the deputy assessor in Albemarle, over 54% of the budget for the entire municipality comes from the ad valorem taxation for real estate. The process is not that different than really what most real estate appraisers do, in the sense that they're collecting data, they're looking at listings, they're looking at market data. The big difference between ad valorem and what like say a regular appraiser would do, or even a CMA from an agent would really boil down to, it's not individual property valuation. They're doing a statistical valuation. So as an example, Forest Lakes, they look at the entirety of the subdivision and try to look at how the properties have been selling in there, and they'll do what's called a sales ratio study. And what that means is they look at what the value of the assessment is from the previous assessment, which in Albemarle will be each year, and then they look at what things have been selling for in that market for the last year. And if it's gone up, they will be at like 95 or 96 or even more percent of what the sales ratio would be on it. And that means that they're going to raise it up because the market has been appreciating. The one thing about assessment I think a lot of people don't realize is the trailing nature of it. It's not real time because they are using sometimes 12 to 18 months worth of retrospective data. And they stop their collecting of data way before they publish, 6 months to 7 months before, depending on how they're doing their processes. And the reason they do that is because at some point they have to say, okay, we can't go any further because they can't continually change what's going on. When I was there, we would reference what was going on real time just to see how we were trending comparatively to where we were when we cut off the assessments. It's just not something that's going to be real time. So when you go into an assessment appeal or something of that nature, you're always dealing with older data, and it's really important to understand when that effective date of that value is.
So I want to get back to the appeal process here in a minute. Jerry, did you want to?
Oh yeah, I love this stuff. So does that mean the reassessments that are happening now, how far behind are they time-wise versus real time? And then the second question is, as a concerned taxpayer, who taxes rub my skin, are we to believe because real-time values have escalated even more? Say if this is like an 18-month value or a 12-month value, we know home values in real time have increased even more, that we can expect reassessments or assessments again to go up even more?
Well, they won't, once the effective date's cut off or established for that assessment period, which again, I think it's in Albemarle, it's sometime around the middle of the year, maybe early fall. So any of the data beyond that, if you're in an appreciating market, your value should actually be a little bit lower than what the actual trend would be as of when they publish the data by a few months. So if they stop and say August, and they just published the data, what, a week, 2 weeks ago?
For Albemarle County, exactly right. It was last week.
There's 3, 4, 5 months there worth of data that they probably are not considering in it. Now,
I don't even think individual property owners received their tax
Not yet.
Reassessment.
No. May, it comes out in May.
So we're trying to get a little ahead of this. But Nikki, just to bring you into the conversation, back at the agent level, right?
Yeah.
So I know on our side of the house we have this conversation all the time. Why is the tax assessed value different than, let's say, the market value, the CMA? And so how do you navigate that conversation with your agents or your sellers? So in other words, we helped, and we'll get back into this in a minute, we helped some folks in Fluvanna County, myself included. The assessment was $80,000 over what the market value was, and I actually,
Oh, wow.
I got reassessed back to the number because I provided the current data. But I'm talking more about how do we have this conversation with buyers or sellers when they start looking at tax assessment and they think that's the real market value.
Well, they're just two different things, truly. They're not the same thing at all. And not to mention that market value is the value at any given moment in time. Like, that's updated in the moment as we're having the discussion. Even from the point of signing a listing agreement to that listing going live, there's a reevaluation of that before that listing goes live, right? But that assessment, that is one point in time from data that is now months old, not to mention not evaluated in the same way that we do a market value assessment, right? So there are two different processes, not to mention historical versus current and in the moment. So those two things alone. And one of the things that I know we as agents really work hard to do is be very proactive in that conversation. Don't wait for someone to ask you about that. That needs to be part of your regular conversation, knowing that people have questions about it.
How's the process different?
So I'm not sure on the assessment side as much. But as far as that market value, there's, depending on the property especially, a considerable amount of time that goes into pulling those comps. It's not quite the same as an appraisal,
Right.
and yet we actually, that's one of the things when, the more I learned about how an appraisal works, the more I was like, okay, so when I'm doing my market value, what can I do to have a more accurate picture of what the home's value is? But I'm looking for, let's say, a neighborhood like Lake Monticello, right? That's a really good go-to neighborhood. I'm going to look for homes that are within that same neighborhood, that have similar amenities, that have similar square footage, bedrooms, garage versus not, right? And if I can't find those, then there are next steps. But in a neighborhood like Lake Monticello, oftentimes we can find those quite simply, unless it is a more unusual property, right?
The major difference between tax assessment, appraisal, and market analysis
Yeah.
is on our side of the house, the market analysis and the appraisal, we actually go inside the home.
That's right.
Right?
That's
and,
true.
And we actually are in the home and looking and kicking door or tires, whatever, doors or tires.
Oh, don't
I
kick the door.
Whatever, kick the door. When the Staff Sergeant Marine Corps came into my
Oh,
life,
you know
kick
what?
the
Okay,
doors in.
I get that,
But,
yes.
we kick the tires, right? We kind of go through it and take a look at it. And that's the big difference, right? The big
Yes.
difference is that, and we've,
Well, and oftentimes, we've actually been in the homes that are comps as well, because
That's
we're
exactly
out there in
right.
the market. I've had appraisers have conversations with me about when they're looking at a listing that I'm representing, right? And they mention, this house, and I'm like, oh, okay, so the pictures look like this, but I've been in this house, and here are the differences between the pictures and what I saw in person. And sometimes they're different enough that makes it not a good comp for
sure.
market value
Yeah.
or an appraisal. But you don't always have that information as an appraiser.
Yeah, the assessor's office doesn't have any police power, meaning they cannot go into your property unless you invite them in. They're kind of like Dracula in that way. If you don't invite them across the threshold, they can't come in.
did you say Dracula?
No, nothing,
I almost spit my coffee out.
nothing negative meant towards my colleagues in the assessment field. Albemarle has a staff of maybe 9 or 10 people, and they're assessing 44,000+ properties in a given calendar year. So there's no way they can look inside of everything. We did, when I was there, policy was that you at minimum would drive by the property. And whenever there's a permit pulled to do some work on the property, we would always try to get into the property then by knocking on the door and making an appointment with the homeowner and saying, hey, we're here to pick up your permit, meaning, they built a brand new deck or they remodeled their kitchen, something that required them to pull a permit, and would give us a reason to have that conversation with them. The other thing is we spent a lot of time talking to agents as well, or at least we did. I don't know anymore if the assessor's office is reaching out that much, but there's been a lot of new stuff like in Norfolk and that area of the state where the assessors have said they don't want door knocking going on anymore because there was some really negative PR that happened in Norfolk, and I think they stopped doing any field
Well,
work.
COVID kind of stopped that too.
Well, what was happening is they were portraying them in the media as being overly aggressive by going to the properties and door knocking.
Oh,
So
really?
it was a catch-22 situation for them.
Well, I kind of wanted to kick the show off. You're definitely an expert. You've kind of been on both sides of the fence, Woody, to kind of go and do that. I think the big difference, because we were talking about Albemarle County's reassessment and the market numbers, percentage-wise, they're actually probably not that far off.
Probably not.
Fulvana is very much so off. We helped 12 folks that reached out to us, and about a quarter of them were pretty close, and they decided not to appeal.
Right.
Everybody else appealed, and we won because we gave real-time data. I think the difference is, and I'd love your opinion on this, I think the difference is Albemarle County is actually in-house, for lack of a better term.
Yes.
Fulvana hires some company, I think they're out of Norfolk or something.
Yeah, they're from another part of the state. Now, they are a company that, and I forget the name of them, they are pretty well respected, and in a lot of small counties and even small cities will contract this out to the lowest bidder. I think that's the rub, though. It's the lowest bidder.
Sure.
I mean, how much diligence is really going into it? I mean, Lake Monticello, if you're off that much in Lake Monticello, I've got a lot of questions because
My
there's-
next door neighbor was 150 grand off.
that's
Wow.
Oh,
unheard of, actually.
Over 150.
Now, with that said, they nailed mine. I thought they did a good job with my value because I live at Lake Monticello as well. But I live in a very homogeneous kind of colonial in the neighborhood, whereas like you're over in the acres, it's a little different.
That was part of it.
Yeah.
We've got 150 homes in that subdivision, and generally every year I get 150 phone calls. So, right. Because it's hard, because it's not waterfront, it's not golf front. It's an acre versus a third of an acre. So,
the more unusual you are, meaning the more non-typical you are.
Thank you for the compliment.
As far as the property goes.
Sorry.
I've been telling him that for 4 years.
Yeah.
Well,
And not in very subtle terms either. By the way.
Sure. The banter between you two is always great. So if you're on the lake, you're actually waterfront, or you're in a very unusual build like a post and beam construction or a contemporary home, the likelihood of your assessment being off is higher because you're not part of the overall typical home in the neighborhood.
So just to kind of wrap up the assessment topic, the reason I wanted to start with that and speak to the successes that we had, when you get your tax assessment bill and you feel it's off, reach out to a trusted advisor, reach out to our team, anybody in the Keller Williams Alliance team or any other trusted advisor, real estate agent. I'm confident they'll be able to help you and give you data. And that's all they needed is, hey, this is the actual comps, this is it. And every single one of them that we did, we were able to help our clients or our neighbors.
I'll add too that if you've got a really egregious situation, hire an appraiser. We do assessment appeals as well. I'll actually go in and work and sit with you at the Board of Equalization and work through it if that's something folks want to do. That doesn't happen a lot in residential, but when you
Commercial,
get those,
it does.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of money in that. Actually, there's a whole.
What's that cost?
Usually, it's going to be a percentage of. The appraisal can't be based on a percentage because there can be no contingency on it. So there's usually a flat appraisal fee, and then whatever the company that's doing the assessment appeal, they will get a percentage of what they save the company. As an example, when Coors did theirs over in Rockingham County, they had a tremendously high bill several years ago, and they brought in a tax rep to do that, which is a company that does assessment appeal, and the agent on that made a ton of money. I mean, like almost six figures, I believe. But they saved them a lot of money.
And that's paid by Coors.
Yeah, it's gonna be paid by them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, because they're contesting, they're trying to save.
Yeah, I get it.
Save money. But please, if
Lesser of two evils.
Right.
Two weevils?
Yeah. Lesser of two evils.
Weevils?
Two evils. Two evils. Woody's getting props. Zeke Mora, John, is it Phelan? Awesome. Al Torres, Sandra Hard, Howard Kalar, all giving Woody props. Tough question for the panel here. Private appraiser, realtor, or city or county assessment? Which one's more accurate? With values. What Woody does, your CMA, or the number you get on a piece of paper in the mail from Alma.
So we'll throw
definitely
that
not
one
the
out.
number. Yeah, let's move that. That's not an option.
Yeah.
So really, it's between
Woody or the CMA, and the private appraiser doesn't always go inside the property. You go inside the property. They're basing theirs perhaps on considerably more data, Woody, than the CMA.
So how about them football games over this weekend? They were pretty good.
So truly, Woody, though, because let me ask you a question. Because when you're doing it, yours is more of a, for certain aspects, more of a set calculation, right? No, it's not?
No.
Okay, it just seems that way for some people.
Well, unfortunately, in my profession, it is that way in some situations. Some appraisers don't. They're checking boxes and they're filling out a form. And I like to say the difference between a good appraiser and a bad appraiser would really be the amount of diligence they put into what they're doing and the amount of explanation that they do. And the difference would be, that most people would get is it's a difference between using a tax service like, say, Jackson Hewitt or a Liberty Tax Service. If you've got, the couple are filing taxes and they only have, each one of them have one job, there's no itemization, no property to really deal with, that's fine. You don't need anything more than that. But, if you've got itemization items and you own a business, you own properties, you want a CPA doing your work. And that's the difference between an appraiser who really does the job and the other ones who are just kind of phoning it in. What we do is every thing that we do should be a custom job with each property that we do. If I'm doing 4 in Forest Lakes in a given week, I shouldn't be doing each of those appraisals the same way. We should be looking at them, in very specific ways for each of them, because each property has a different story to tell. And that's what I tell my crew, and when I'm teaching, when you're writing an appraisal, you got to tell me the story about the property and what
So
it's
it's
doing.
more than numbers.
It's way more than numbers.
There you go.
I mean, we're looking at both qualitative and quantitative data. I mean, qualitative being, how maybe someone's looking at something subjectively. That's why I'll reach out to Nikki or to Keith when you guys have got a sale and say, hey, what was going on with this? It looks like it sold a little bit low. I mean, where
What's the story?
Yeah, where the buyer's not motivated to sell it, or and oftentimes in a situation like that, you'll find out there was a divorce going on, or someone had to take a job and move immediately, so they were willing to be less heavy on getting as much as they can.
So kind of answer the question around.
Did we get? I
We're still
know.
getting there. I'm just saying.
Did we get an answer there?
I will be the
Okay.
politician at
All
the
right.
table today.
All right.
But to answer the question in a roundabout way, unless it's a cash transaction, it really requires 3 entities to actually get there: a buyer, a seller, and an appraiser, because the appraiser is going to set the value for the loan for the buyer. So there's kind of 2 halves for it. The front end of it, I'll speak. Nikki, jump in, please.
Okay.
Sometimes when we're usually very successful with the data and having the folks that are listing go with our number. But sometimes we hit a brick wall. And that's when I say, hey, I'll tell you what, we'll pay for it. Go reach out to Woody. Let Woody go ahead and do the appraisal for it. Well, I believe so much in my numbers. We'll pay whatever the fee is. Have them go ahead and do that. But here's the deal. Whatever Woody's number is, that's the number that we're going to go with. And 9 times out of 10,
Yeah.
they go, yeah, we'll go with your number. Right? Matter of fact, 99.99%. But it happens particularly on land transactions. I'm the land ambassador for Keller Williams, the region, and I was out west, and I can't tell you how many phone calls I get. Well, I don't know how to value the land, and the first question I said, do you have a trusted appraiser in your market area? Call them, say, let that person come up with the value.
Land is very difficult to do right. There's, in my side of the profession, a lot of appraisers, if you read the appraisal report, they won't even put a land value in it, even though they're supposed to do that.
Whoa. Say that again?
They won't. A lot of them will not put in a land value, or they'll just parrot whatever the assessment says, which both are no-nos. You should never do that.
Wow.
And that's what I always tell folks: if you're going to hire an appraiser, if you're not going to hire us, at least do some research and find out who you're working with. That's just a corner that gets cut oftentimes in the appraisal profession.
He's got questions coming in.
Yeah.
When you come on the show, we get a lot of engagement. I'm going to highlight that. No.
Woody, when you come on the show, we get a lot of
I want to
engagement.
highlight that. I want to make sure that's emphasized. I try to
Hey,
do
Woody,
that every
hey, Woody,
time.
when you come on, we get a lot of engagement.
I try to emphasize that every time Woody's on.
It might be the clean shaven thing. I think
I gotcha.
it might- I think-
Stephanie Wells Rhodes
Hey,
for Woody
Stephanie.
specifically here. My son's new construction appraisal came in lower than expected. The report said Buckingham. We requested it and were told that it was the same in Fluvanna that it is in Buckingham. Does Woody agree with that?
No, I don't. Buckingham is a tertiary market to the Charlottesville market. It falls between Lynchburg here and Farmville, and even Richmond. Fluvanna, Fluvanna is it's a myriad of markets. You've got Lake Monticello, you've got Palmyra, you've got just the different areas of it. So as a whole, no, I don't agree with that at all. Hopefully, the appraisal was done looking at other competitive properties in Buckingham, particularly in the same region of the county. There's a lot of new construction still going on down there, and it has gone down, not as much as we're seeing in Albemarle or even Fluvanna, but, and we do quite a bit of work in Buckingham, so I've never had a hard time finding comps.
I don't get Buckingham. Why?
Depends on where in Fluvanna that property is.
Do you mind if we go to some slides from Fluvanna? Because this is a perfect
Yeah.
segue in it.
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
I broke out new construction in that. Judah, would you mind going to slide 3 for Fluvanna County, please? So, and thank you for the feed. Thank you.
Stephanie, yeah.
thank you, everybody, but also thank you for the feedback that I've received since the last couple of shows. I dropped out a lot of acronyms out of the slides, and I apologize in advance for that. But, so I broke out Fluvanna County only, so this is all data sourced from MLS. I pull the data and create these slides.
This is great.
Single-family detached, new construction only, and this slide number 3 excludes Lake Monticello, right? Because we've got to factor Lake Monticello out. But if you take a look at slide 3, the volume of new construction units was 97. That's a huge number, right? You should be able to get some comps out of that.
Oh, definitely.
And this property it's Scottsville. It's right off 6 on Hardware
Got it.
Road. So that's definitely, I mean,
Yeah, in Scott. Yep,
Yeah.
there you go. Nice. Very nicely done, Nikki. Reading the
it's
feed
I know
right there.
I know this area. I'm like,
Yeah.
those should not be the same. Don't
In
say
Scottsville,
Buckingham and
off Route
Fluvanna are the
6.
same.
Well,
Hardware
maybe
Road.
they were thinking because it was so close to Buckingham, maybe?
I
was
still
the-
feel like that's a lack of thought. I
So
mean,
what
I
should she
don't
do?
know.
What? Give her.
When we're dealing with, a weird property that's got maybe 150 acres, we might go over into Fluvanna because there's a limit, there's not a lot of volume or frequency of sales for those types of properties. We might be making a locational adjustment, though, for those as well. But you have to be really careful with it. With new construction, too, sometimes they're going to come in under contract. And the reason is, a lot of times borrowers will put every upgrade into the property that they want. And sometimes what you want will outpace what the market is willing to pay for it. So that may be what's going on there. It may not be. I don't know. But that's just one of the first things that
Well,
come to mind.
I've got some experience in this. I did 600 of them.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what goes on. So more than likely what's happening here is that they did the appraisal based on a set of plans and some very tertiary, is I like that big word? Tertiary specs. Think I used it right.
Change
Sounded
orders
good to
be
me,
damned.
you know?
Yeah. Then my suggestion would be, if you do have change orders and stuff like that with some upgrades, get them over to the appraiser.
Yeah.
And say, look, time out, have you calculated this? So on our side of the house, I've actually got a custom new construction meeting this afternoon. And, when we sit down.
Thought you were taking the day off. Riding the bicycle.
No,
Yeah,
that's still taking the day off. For
Okay.
a
No, but that's at
loser like
12:30.
you.
Then I'm going to ride my
Gotcha.
bike at 2:30.
Gotcha.
Or not. But anyway, so when we sit down with the appraiser on that, I, as the agent, am going to have because I'm going to make sure I want to talk to the appraiser.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm going to have every upgrade that they have in it. Look, Stephanie, you might not get $1 to $1. You might get 25 cents on the dollar, but you'll get something
Yeah.
on it.
Well, okay, so this is a unique area too, because it's Fluvanna County and it's within the town of Scottsville, and everyone may not understand where the priority is and where you're comparing properties and that type of thing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Is it in the town of Scottsville or in the
You
She
know what? I
told
don't
us.
know. It's hardware. I'd have to look up the map.
Yeah, so it's not actually physically in
Okay,
the
so maybe
town.
not.
We can ask her,
Scottsville
Stephanie.
area.
Yeah.
So the Scottsville area in Fluvanna.
Let's just pretend it were a property though, because the town of Scottsville covers 3 counties, right? Albemarle,
Very good
Fluvanna,
point.
and Buckingham.
Well, it actually ends at the Buckingham border there at the James River. But
the actual town?
yeah, the postal code.
The postal code does. There we go.
Incorporates
Okay.
3 counties for
Thank
sure.
you for clarifying
We run
that.
into that all the time too
Yes.
with mortgage companies out of the area. They'll order an appraisal and they think it's in Buckingham. It might be in Albemarle, or it might be in Fluvanna. So it's a weird thing.
Yes.
That we deal
Well,
with.
it's like Lake
Postal code
Monticello. Lake
covers
Monticello
3.
is Palmyra, but we're not
Yes,
in
but it's
Palmyra.
really Lake
Right,
Monticello.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
not
it's
the
own,
same.
Lake Monticello is its own census designated area, so it's its own thing.
Yeah, but if you want to mail something.
Oh yeah,
you know.
people still do that.
I don't, yes.
I still
yes,
use- I still
do.
mail. Me
I
too.
like it when I get something that's not a
Talk
bill
about
or
mail.
junk.
Did you know it went up 66 cents now or something like that?
Is it? I did not know
Yeah,
that.
Yona was, we went out and bought a bunch of stamps because we, like $200 worth of stamps because we did want to,
This
apparently
is like
if you
listening
bought.
to my mother, who was born in 1933, talk about Pepsi Cola costing 5 cents.
Okay, I totally used to collect stamps as a child, so we're
He's
just gonna
60
say
now,
that.
Woody. He's 60.
60's not old.
So let's just go back to
60.
the
Woody,
idea
Woody,
of Fluvanna.
I love you, man. Thank you.
60's the new 40.
It is, I agree.
You're my best friend, Woody.
That's great, Keith.
But on that slide 3, if you don't mind, if I
Yep,
jump
go
in
for
right
it.
now.
Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to note on it, and it's interesting on new construction, because when we start looking at some resales, the volume starts going up and down. But if you take a look at the bar charts on that, new construction's been kind of a steady increase, rather low in 18 and 19. It was flat around 32, but to jump up to 97, and Judy, if you go to slide number 4, now, Woody, to your point, I did not segregate outside of Lake Monticello HOAs, right? You might have some more data on that. But if you take a look at where we're at, the median sales price on new construction is 403 and 22. That's roughly 60 grand over 21. But you kind of, other than 18, 19 was a little bit off, you start looking at this steady increase. And we go back to look at Lake Monticello existing, you'll see numbers changing a little bit. So new construction actually in Fluvanna surprised me, frankly. I didn't expect to see these numbers because I really
It's doing well.
looking. Any
Yeah.
thoughts on that, guys?
I mean, it is a strong niche in the market for sure. I mean, we do a ton of new construction, and it's probably 50% of our business, or was. I mean, things are changing this year big time for what we're doing and what we're being hired to do. But it's been coming on like gangbusters, and cost is such a relevant data point for new construction. The cost of labor, the cost of materials, the supply chain issues we've been having with everything, that's really caused pricing to go up. And, folks are happy to have a home built. I think a lot of consumers like having the idea of having a brand new home.
I had this debate with Greg Slater on the way in this morning.
Did you win?
No. Let me rephrase that. I thought I win, but he won't admit that I won. Because when I do these numbers, I always exclude new construction because I think it skews the numbers. The volume of the dollar amount is so different. So if you look at, let me see if I can get this right. On slide 4 for 2022, it was 403 was the median sales price. But if you go to Fluvanna County single-family detached, this would be slide number 2, which excludes Lake Monticello and new construction, we're at 358. So roughly we're over 50 grand more. That's median, right? This is average prices. So I always pull out new construction because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, because this would be a debate that Mr. Slater and I are having.
Well, what's his argument based on that new construction does not skew the data? Because from a layman's perspective, it looks like it skews the data.
Yeah.
We have more comments coming in.
We're going to have to get him on the show.
Yeah.
I think it ended with because I said so.
Well, you're starting to compare apples to apricots. I mean, when you're dealing with existing construction versus new construction, existing construction is going to have a lot of older stuff.
Yeah.
So when you're dealing with a property or a group of properties that are 55, 65, 75 years old, their pricing point is going to be way different than new construction. They will skew the data. There's more property that's existing than property that's being built. So that's always, and it's usually a higher volume point in our market. So that's always going to push the data towards the median, and the median in this case is going to be pushed towards the lower part of the range because you've got a lot of existing construction that's older.
That's a good take right there.
Thank you. I'm going to call him on the way home.
Yeah, you should just play the show.
Yeah.
Greg, listen to this.
Yeah, at such and such, I got to write that down. Okay.
Yeah,
got
that's-
it. We're gonna write the
You got to
name
give
down.
Greg
Hold
props.
your phone up to the speaker.
When it comes to new construction, Greg is the guy. I mean,
He absolutely is. I'm excited about having him because I've got him to commit to it. We're working on a date. I'm looking forward to the little back and forth live.
Rich Blackman, the third, giving him props. Nicole Allen, Nikki Clark, giving him props. Joshua Smith, giving him props. Nicole Allen agrees that land is the hardest to appraise. She says the appraiser doesn't always set value per se. Alone says contractor appraisal value, whichever is less. Al Torres says they can get more complex, but it's the work that makes one become a valued appraiser in response to the land being the hardest to appraise. What
yeah,
do you think, Joe?
for sure.
More comments coming in. Joe Meyer, materials are getting better, but HVAC equipment in certain categories of ceramic materials like tiles, clay bricks, cement-based building materials have gotten slightly worse.
I've got a couple of custom customers I'm working with. We had this conversation over the weekend. Materials are balanced out. Look, historically, I've been doing this for 35 years. Materials kind of go up and down, concrete, vinyl, stuff. The big problem is the labor.
Oh, yeah.
Just that's the struggle, and the conversations we're having with custom builders, which is, I'm glad for them, not so glad for my client. They're like, we're delivering mid-24.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
if you're lucky, we'll start in 23.
we live in a very great region. I love where we live, and I don't mean this as a negative takeaway, but in the sense that our economy is getting built around the fact that we want all of our kids to go to college, we want to become middle managers and stuff like that. You can make a killing for a living if you want to get into the trade professions. But the trade professions are it's a more cyclical feast or famine kind of thing. It can be very tough unless you know how to have a sustainable plan to do what you're doing. But I can't fault contractors right now for trying to make as much as they can, because there was a while there where they weren't making hardly anything.
Yeah.
Takes a lot of wear and tear on your body and health potentially too.
For sure.
And so if you're not set up in a plan where you're moving up to owning and running and also covering healthcare and keeping that in mind, that can be a challenge.
It certainly can.
And they're making great points. The developer and home builder that's on our active client roster, he sells his current house every 2 years. He's moving every 2 years.
Really?
Well, that's also
Because the capital gains
Yeah,
exposure
yeah,
is
yeah.
much less when you hit the 2-year clip of
Gotcha.
being in the house. But I mean, that's not easy on the family. And he's got a very loving significant other.
there's
patient,
a reason
significant
why
other.
I only built 2 houses.
But it's a really
Mrs.
solid
Smith wants to move out of the
investment
second
plan.
one. But Nikki, to go back to
Yeah.
the wear and tear, had a conversation with my little brother over the weekend. This is the guy that's a trim carpenter, and he's not laying block or something like that. He's a high-end trim carpenter, and he was like, Keith, I need to look at some other alternatives. The body
Yes.
just isn't doing what I want it to do any longer. And we're talking about radon and home inspections and different things. But that's a real thing. When you hit your 40s, things
Well, and
start.
depending on what you've done, like my
Yeah.
papa was a mechanic, my dad worked at a Monsanto plant for a while. My brother, closest in age, is an electrician. My mom does all sorts of garden design, landscaping, and actual installation and physical work and manual labor. And there's just a difference that makes, not even factoring in that some of us end up with things like arthritis as we get older, right? So I think that's a really important side. I'm a huge fan of promoting the trades, and I think that we've got to make sure that this part of the conversation is part of that conversation.
For sure.
Well said. Very well said.
Without a doubt. Guys want to tackle Lake Monticello?
Let's do it.
Unless we have some other questions.
Well, I mean, we have comments, yeah. This is from Neil Williamson. Woody, could you please define mass assessment?
Ooh.
So mass assessment is just the type of valuation that's going on. In normal appraisal, we're comparing one property to very specific properties. In mass appraisal, what happens is the assessor's going to set what we call a universe or a niche of property. So as an example, Lake Monticello. All your 2-story colonials that are non-waterfront, non-golf, non-new construction, you would put them all into one category. And then when you're doing your sales ratio study in that situation, you're looking at all those types of properties that have sold in the time period that you're appraising and trying to see, well, did they sell at, above, or below the assessed value? And depending on how that sales ratio study, what it indicates, that will indicate how they're going to adjust their value for the ad valorem.
Good answer. Ken Wooten says, good morning, Nikki.
Hi, Dad.
So, Jerry and I'll kind of jump in this, unless we have some other.
No, go ahead.
So, Jerry and I have been over the months debating, what did 2022 kind of look like as far as volume goes, right? And then maybe we can jump into what we all think 2023 is going to look like. And I've been saying for some time, micro markets matter, and the numbers I ran on Fluvanna County proved that a little bit. So if everybody would look at slide number 1, so this is Fluvanna County, single family detached, does not include new construction, and excludes Lake Monticello, right? So this is just everything other than that. So, but if you kind of take a look at 2022, we did 172 sales, or, actual volume of units closed, look pretty darn close to 2018. We've been saying that for quite some time. But it's really interesting if we go, and I'm bouncing around a little bit on you, Judah, so I apologize. But if you go to slide number 5,
Yep.
so this is Lake Monticello, single-family detached, does not include new construction, and excludes everything for Havana County. Well, we're not even close to 2018. Actually, we're closer to 2017 and 16 volume. So Lake Monticello has done a pretty substantial drop in volume in 2022. Back to, if you look at that slide number 5, it's actually below 2018 volume. It's actually more closer to 2017 volume, right? So it's really interesting. The county itself was kind of around the 18-19 volume, which we've been talking about.
Who do you attribute that to?
That's what I wanted to ask Woody and Nikki. I didn't finish these until late last night, and I actually didn't expect to see that, to be frank with you. I expected Lake Monticello maybe volume to be a little bit better, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's due to pricing.
I think Lake Monticello has gotten pricier. There was a time where Lake Monticello, where if you wanted to get a house, you were looking at Lake Monticello and a couple other areas. Now, find me a home in great shape for below 3 at the lake.
Well,
how about below 350 at the lake?
Well, slide 6 will prove that to you, right? So if we take a look at the volume is kind of all over the map on the bar charts.
318.
Right? But if you go ahead and look at 6, we're at 318, and we're steadily climbing from 215 up to 318. 17th, to your point, was 195.
Yeah.
So
huge delta.
Yeah. So that's probably it. We had this conversation on Friday. Where does housing affordability start?
Right.
It's probably below 3.
No, it's closer to a 2.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, got it. So, if you want to hit that 80, because I know this is the chair of the land trust, if you want to hit 80% AMI purchase in this market right now, you got to be somewhere between 2 and 215.
Right.
We haven't seen those numbers since 2017.
The affordability index for Charlottesville as a whole, Fluvanna, the whole area. I mean, it's if you're in that category, you're going to have a really hard time finding a home.
Yeah.
So, Nikki,
you're probably renting.
How do we have this conversation with our buyers that are in that price range? How do we have that conversation?
So do you mean needing something in that 200? Because it happens. Like I have a sales meeting every Tuesday, and the first 15 minutes is we're sharing what we've got coming on the market and what our buyer needs are.
I mean, they can get
and
a
I have
condo.
a list. Well, a lot of times maybe, and if you add in the condo fee, a lot of times that makes it unaffordable for people who need that price range. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying it's not still a good deal, but it's still not going to work for them, right?
So I'm looking at January 17th, 2022, last 7 days. I'm looking at it right now, car footprint, last 7 days. And a week ago, was 53 came on the market, 51 new came in the last week. 66 went pending, 71 went pending in the last week. So the tempo is not slowing down.
No, not at
So
all.
what do you make of that?
Well, which question? I'm like, but I was on the first
just
one.
jump
I
with that.
know. Well, no, but the other one though, people are
Remember,
just
I got
choosing
ADD.
different
I'm
areas.
done with that. I
Me
moved
too.
on.
I know, which meant I took a deep dive into the first question.
Well, answer the first one. We'll get back to that one.
Well, a lot of people are expanding where they're going to look. Truly, sometimes it's a matter of, okay, well, if I need a house in this price range, maybe I'm going to move somewhere else. And sometimes that means they're going to also do a job change, because then they're too far away to hang on to that job that they have. Let's just say in Charlottesville, for example, because they're only going to be able to drive so far, pay so much in gas, spend so much of their time, and the numbers still work out. Yes, it is.
And that's concerning. That's concerning.
It is a huge concern.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at these. I pulled up the 50.
And then also, who's going to do those jobs?
Mm-hmm.
The 51 that came on in the last 7 days. 5 of them are under 199.5 and under. excuse me, 6, I apologize, 199.9, then it jumps to 230.
I mean, you can find 220 and under close in the urban ring, and a place I know well with an investment property is Villas at Southern Ridge. But to Nikki's point, the monthly dues are $200 a month. And that $200 a month is basically a utility bill that's going to get the place expensive for people. You got 218 right now, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in the Villas at Southern Ridge. That's
Nice.
10 minutes from UVA.
Yeah.
And most buyers want single-family detached.
Yeah, but to Nikki's point,
To get in
we
the
got to
market.
start changing your criteria. Do you live in Waynesboro and change jobs?
Yes.
Or do you stay here and,
Oh,
and
see,
get a
Waynesboro's
condo?
not quite far enough to change jobs for a lot of people.
Or maybe
Right.
it's
Truly, right? But maybe
where would you say?
Harrisonburg
Fredericksburg?
or like
Yeah.
depending on which direction you're going to
Sure.
go.
Yeah.
But I will say part of that conversation, to go to your second question, I think, I'm not sure, because I forgot what it was now.
It's okay.
Would
So
be
did
awesome. So we're in the same ADD boat. But when you're looking at that price range and the people who want that standalone structure with, you know, the yard and all the things, what do they want right now versus what do they want 10 years from now? Those two things probably need to be different things. So this needs to be a stepping stone.
For
Have the
sure.
condo
Yeah.
be a stepping point, whether it's that they stay in it long enough where there's some equity and they sell it because they're just not wanting to do the investment route of life, or they stay in it long enough for it to be a valuable investment property, and then they can take the opportunity to take a next stepping point and upgrade to maybe it's not a condo, maybe it's even a townhome still, depending on what our market is in the
Well
moment,
said.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been saying this for quite some time. It's 6 things: location, price, features, condition, timing. Is it the right time? And, you know, I catch a little you-know-what for it, but who's on the
Yeah.
other side matters,
Yes.
right? It really matters who's part of your team and on both sides of it. But that's what happens. I'm having the same discussion with my daughter and son-in-law out in Richmond,
Oh, yeah.
where, right, location, we figured out. Price, we kind of know. It's the features and conditions that we can't wrap our brain around because we can't find what we want.
Yep.
On,
Oh, I get that.
On that end of it.
Heather Placer Mall, Nicole Allen, Al Torres, and Joe Meyer are all having a conversation while watching the show in the comment section
Cool.
of Woody Fincham's Facebook page right now, which is great. There's 4 different real estate firms watching the show, 5 including Keller Williams, as we speak right now. And viewers and listeners, your comments are welcome and appreciated on the show. I ask Woody Fincham this question every single time he's on the show, and it leads to a spirited, friendly, and respectable debate here. Is this buyer's or seller's market territory?
We're still in a seller's market, I
Yep.
believe. I mean, pricing has continued to go up. We're starting to see some weakening, though. I mean, some of the data that I ran for the show today, you know, concession frequency's up. The amount of concessions being
Big
paid
time.
is also up. We're getting back to that 3% as a normal market, whereas there were no concessions several months ago.
Home inspections?
Yes. Days on market are starting to increase a little bit. I mean, we're still a
A
long
lot
ways.
of price changes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Price improvements is
Yeah.
Are you-
I like that.
Are
I'm
you
like,
starting to
"Oh."
see that? Are you starting to see that wane a little bit? I think as sellers now, we've been 6 months into this. We're starting to do. I know we're starting to see that.
I think there's that whole price improvement situation because now people are having a
Come
little
to
more,
Jesus.
Truly,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
what you've said, yes, because that's a hard shift to make.
For
It's
sure.
hard to realize that you waited just a little too long or life didn't line up so that you were able to have the market 6 months ago. That's not easy.
Well said.
So while everybody was chatting, which I didn't do yet this morning, I wanted to see how much was available at Lake Monticello. What's active? It's 15. 15.
That's nothing. And for
It's
the
nothing, but it
viewers,
sounds good compared to like 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Or a year ago or something. I don't
Well-
know.
viewers and listeners of this show that don't know, Lake Monticello has 4,300 homes. So if 15 homes are on the market, it's to
Ginormous.
Woody's point that it's a seller's market because inventory is minuscule, which
Yes.
is the point Keith is trying to make here.
Yes.
Oh, when I first started in real estate, like my clients would be like, "Why are there so many homes for sale in Lake Monticello? Is there something wrong?" And I'm like, "Oh no, you don't understand how large this community is."
Right, right.
So I'm looking at it. It's interesting. So out of the 15, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them are proposed detached. So those are paper houses.
Paper houses.
So
Yeah.
those are
It's 11.
Oh, man.
So it's really,
It's
if
11.
you take
It's not
out
even the same.
quote unquote, new construction, or, so when they say proposed detached, just to quantify.
So what are we talking, like 3% of the neighborhood?
Oh, no. 1%'s 4,300, 43, right? So it's 0.25?
It's
Yeah.
not much.
No,
Yeah.
no, that's
Well,
wild.
so folks who are listening, proposed detached means there isn't a foundation in the ground.
Right.
There isn't anything. This is a lot and a set of plans in it, and they're
Got a
looking.
builder who's willing to
They're
build.
they're looking for a buyer first.
Yes.
And then they'll go ahead and build. So if you want to walk in there and buy something right now, you've got 11 homes to choose from.
How many are under 300,000?
Oh, yeah, you would ask me that. Moment, please.
I would say of the 11 under 300K.
3.
Is it 3?
Oh, wow.
3.
Wow.
Oh, by the way, 2 of them are proposed attached, so it's 1.
Oh.
We jumped from hold on a second here. This is the 60-year-old.
All right, so we're highlighting
269 to
the
375.
entry point and move up market right now with the Lake Monticello listings he's talking about. How about luxury? How about jumbo market? What's the take on jumbo and up?
I mean, we do a lot of that work, and we're not really seeing a huge change in it whatsoever. I mean, that is an insulated market in many cases. You're talking about folks that can, if they're buying a $3 million estate, they can write a check for it. They do borrow in a lot of situations, just do small mortgages for tax purposes and things like that. But I'm not seeing a huge shift of any negativity whatsoever. There's no weakening in the market as far as I can tell.
So this is a great question for you, Woody, because I get asked all the time and I don't know the answer to it. I know what my answer is. What defines a luxury market? Where does that number start?
It varies, and with Charlottesville, this region, you got to remember too that you can have some luxury property in places like Ednam and Farmington, even in Jerry's neighborhood. It escapes me now. Glenmore. There's some really, really high-end property in there. Generally speaking, it's going to be like the upper, like 0.5%, 1% price point in the market.
Explain that, please.
So, I mean, what's our median sales price for the region? I forget.
Oh, for car?
Yeah.
Look at that. I will go.
I think I have that slide.
Well, actually, we have to. I didn't bring it with me. We'll have to go to Real Talk with Keith Smith and pull down the reports column.
570.
No, I believe.
Albemarle County.
Albemarle County. So we're just talking Albemarle County.
570.
570, but the car footprint is, I think, what you were asking.
Well, I mean, Albemarle is a good.
Okay, so let's call it 570.
Because that's where a good majority of our luxury estates are going to be. So, I mean, you're probably getting up into. I mean, 1.5 million is not even. I mean, they're very nice homes, but we're not getting into that very unusual high-end custom.
So the 2 buyers I'm working on custom homes, we had to have that. Okay, cost expectation conversation.
So you're saying luxury is 1.5 and above?
In Albemarle County?
Probably.
I can tell you,
Albemarle
new construction, you're there,
That's serious right there.
and that was pretty.
1.5 and above, you would be in Albemarle County. You have Keswick Estates. You have the farms or farmettes and estates in Keswick.
Yep.
Maybe a little bit of Troy, the Albemarle County side of Troy. You got 1.5. Ednam Forest has got 1.5. Ednam Village perhaps does not. That might be a stretch for Ednam
Village is going to be under $1 million most of the time.
Yeah. Farmington certainly above 1.5, and then along the Owensville, Tillman, Ivy corridor, and maybe the Rocks, you could find 1.5 and above.
Yes.
Neighborhood off 64, and the one adjacent to it.
And the Rocks, nothing against them, but they are more of a track-built custom than they are, a true.
It's production
Yeah.
custom.
There you go. That's a better term for it.
Production custom.
So Albemarle County, 1.5 million and up, active. What's on the MLS right now is 28 homes. So just think about that. There's more than all of Lake Monticello, which again, the numbers are a little bit different.
Sure.
Median list price is 2.8. Average list price is 3.7.
we were having this. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's okay. 15 are in pending. So the ratio is a little bit not the 1-to-1 for sure on it, but the median list price, pending price right now is 1.7 million. So to your point, they're probably around that. I wanted to, while you were asked the question, I want to look at what's sold in the last 6 months at that price point.
What's the median or close to the middle of the acreage range on those properties?
Oh, you would ask that. I changed from the slide.
Oh, I've got mine right here. I can.
You got yours. Look at that. Hold on a second here. I can tell you that here in a minute. CMA, summary. We're on pending or list?
Listings, I think, is a better
So
metric.
acreage is 40, the median size is 49 acres.
Yeah. So I mean, you're buying a lot of land.
Average, believe it or not, is 95.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Well, the upper end of the range is going to skew the average big time because you've got several hundred acres on some of those properties.
So I'm just out of curiosity. I want to see while you were chatting.
And back to your point, Jerry, I mean, those areas you all mentioned, yeah, they are all very prominent areas of the market. But Albemarle and the whole region, there's so many big estates all over. I mean, you can go anywhere in the county almost, and even if it's one of the lesser expensive areas, you're going to have a few estates right there, and they're super high value properties.
We were having this discussion with Anonymous, who, as you know, is a data guy.
Yeah.
And he calls himself a finance refugee from Manhattan. This dude has a number of houses around, let's say, the world. One of them is in Charlottesville. And now perspective is relative here. You're talking a data guy, a finance guy that's very wealthy. And he said in the grand scheme of things, Charlottesville does not have a ton, he's talking city specifically, of high dollar property. He said if you think about Charlottesville City, how many pieces of property can you name that say are 1.5 million or up? Or even if you raise that bar to 2 million or up, you don't have a lot. And we attributed that to the lack of land in the city with some of these properties. It's not like you were getting a ton of real estate.
Yeah.
And he tried to put that in perspective.
It'll be
with
condos more than likely.
Well, and he tried to put it in perspective with Manhattan. He goes, anywhere in Manhattan where he's from, you got
Yeah,
3 million and up.
for about this big.
That's what I'm saying. That's what he's
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, I mean, Manhattan's a different universe, really. Not even a different place, it's a different universe. I mean, there's a lot of high-end 1.5 and up property in the city.
Charlottesville City.
Yeah, you get around Rugby, around the university. We do a lot of, I call them estates, but they're not. But I mean, for the city, they are big. Some of these things have 2 acres, an acre or so of land, and you can subdivide that land into several lots at that point. So the land value just there.
As soon
is
as I
really
lose my
high.
mustache, it'll be easier.
Well, Neil's got a question on that right now. Neil asked this question of all the experts we have on the show. Do you believe the upzoning is going to impact housing affordability? How do you see the upzoning impacting Charlottesville's real estate ecosystem?
When does zoning not affect it? I mean,
All the time.
Anytime zoning changes, it's going to that perspective is definitely changing.
Does it change for affordability?
It depends on how we do it. I mean, it's one of those things that anything that you want to do it's a great idea. Should you do it? That's another question, and it's how it gets implemented. I mean, if we don't figure out a way to bring in some more affordable housing, our service industry is going to be completely destitute.
Yeah.
I mean, look at.
I think it would be non-existent, to Nikki's point.
Yeah, I mean, look at
not even here.
Look
I
at
think
other
you're
cities
almost there.
like Vail and Breckenridge. They're actually
People
allowing
are
accessory
struggling.
dwelling units to be built en masse now. And like if you've got a commercial property, you can put an apartment on it where you used to not be able to do that under their zoning. But they've upzoned. And so now they're allowing folks to come in and that are working at 50,000 or below, whatever the income level is there. And they're able to it's almost like rent control, but it's
Yeah.
so people don't have to drive.
Yeah.
The last time I went to Jackson Hole, which is one of the most wealthy places in the country, you've got people driving from an hour and a half to go there.
Yeah.
I mean, and
Crazy.
they're working as a restaurant waitress. It's
Yeah.
it's sad.
Well, does it impact? I mean,
But that happens here, though.
They're not driving that far, and there's still
Not an hour and a half, but
they're
coming from the other side of the mountain,
There's
though.
still some housing inventory that caters to frontline workers. Now, should there be more? 100%. Do we think it impacts housing affordability? How it's going to play out now?
Well, I mean, I may or may not have conversation with bartenders on a regular basis, and I do ask them where they live, and they generally are partnering up, right, roommating up, and
Yeah.
they're renting and all that stuff, so they can stay close.
Do you think it impacts housing affordability?
Absolutely.
You do think it will impact housing affordability?
I do, but again, it's going to be how the implementation's done. If we upzone and allow investors to take it over and just do to the market, open market rentals,
Apartments. That's
and
what I
things
think is
like
going to
that,
happen.
you're not going to fix the problem. We've got to have some way of setting aside, doing some rent control or something. And I hate rent control. I think the concept of it doesn't
The word
work.
even hurts saying
Yeah.
I don't think we'll have rent control here.
But we need something that's going to allow folks that need this type of apartment to live in.
Well-
and if you leave it to just the general consensus, I mean, short-term rentals are still banging away in the city. And
So Ned Galloway and myself are giving a presentation tomorrow to the Charlottesville City
You
Council.
guys hang out a lot together. You and Ned.
He might like a gin.
Yeah.
It could be, I don't know.
From time to time, it's at a local watering hole.
But we are actually, as chair and vice chair of the Regional Housing Partnership, are going to be giving a presentation to it. And this topic I intend to talk about. They gave us a half an hour, which was a mistake. So we're gonna talk for a half an hour. But I do want to bounce backwards a little bit.
I don't think it's going to impact housing affordability.
What do you think, Nikki?
I think it's going to be what Woody said could be a potential scenario where developers and investors and speculators buy them and create for-market housing.
So if you go back to the tape on, Nikki, just give me a second. If you
No,
go
you're
back
good.
to the tape on Friday,
going.
to Woody's point, it's not about they're going to do it. They're going to do it. It's the how. What are the strings that are going to be attached to it, or what's the process they're going to be put in there? So, for instance, out in Seattle and Portland, they've done the same thing. Those who watch and listen to the show heard me say this before, but they allowed land trusts, they allowed parking, they've changed all the criteria to it. The other thing is they'll find out once they do this, now they got to figure out how to get the building codes to match what they're trying to do.
Well, so then what do we do to make this, instead of it depends on how they do it, how can this be impacted so that they do it well and it impacts our community well?
It's a great question.
So you go in front of them and talk for half an hour.
Thank you, Keith and Ned.
You thank Neil Williamson because he's doing
He's
this and
amazing.
there for
Yes.
us all the time. You take an email, a phone call, a text to your city council members and talk to them because they only know what they hear.
It's got to be with tax incentives. That's
Well,
the only
that's
way
how-
you can do it.
that's exactly
Maybe
how-
some land trusts and some tax incentives.
So that's exactly how they did it out in Seattle and Portland. If you did housing affordable.
And I don't know if you have the political capital or the political will for the tax incentives right now. I mean, rent control gave you the heebie-jeebies. You start
Yeah.
saying tax incentivizing developers, what do you think the heebie-jeebies are going to be then? Because
Well,
that's basically what you're saying.
It's two different, I think it's two different things. But that's how they did it out in Seattle and Portland. They said if you did something for housing affordability, we gave you a $15,000 tax credit, you got to connect to the water and sewer for free. You had to make a commitment. I believe it was, each jurisdiction was a little different. One was 10 years, one was 15 years. But you have to make that commitment for that long. But there are processes to go ahead and do that. Are they being discussed or not? I can't tell you. I'm going to find out tomorrow, though.
So then I guess my question would be is how much do people really like the Charlottesville that we currently have? Because it's really hard to sustain with what we have. And I don't think people understand the reality of
I
that.
don't think people understand the reality.
And that's a challenge.
I think that's a great point. I think she's right. I don't think people understand the reality of having housing that does not exist for the service industry. If you have folks that cannot work in the service industry, how can you have a world-class city? Because you can't have a service industry.
I call it workforce housing, but
Red Lobster
Yes,
just
I like
announced they're
that.
closing over the weekend.
yeah.
Red
wow.
Lobster.
Man.
Think about that.
But then look who's hiring more people. It's the upper end, right? It's Woolen Mills.
We
it's-
have Waffle House closing for labor shortage.
Yeah.
Red Lobster closing for labor shortage. Restaurants closing because they can't staff them. If we don't figure this out, one of the things we love about the area,
Goes away.
restaurants goes away. Or the restaurant has to pay such significant wages to labor that they can't help but charge $40 a head for food or $50 a head for food.
I'm sorry, guys, get off topic a little bit.
Yeah.
Have you starting to see now that they're doing built-in 20% tips on the certain restaurants are
Yeah.
starting to do that now? That right off the bat, you have a 20% tip built into it, which is great. I mean, that's how these folks who serve us so well make their living.
A lot of people have a very unrealistic view of what tipping is too.
Well,
and then if you've never,
unless you worked
I'll
in
leave
that
it
world.
at that.
Well, please add to that.
Oh, I think it's if I go to dinner with people and I see that they tip low, I remember that. To me, I'm like, and for me, like I've never lived a eating out a whole lot life outside of some of my work engagement. If I can't afford to tip well, then I don't go out.
You shouldn't be going out.
Absolutely not.
Nicole Allen, Virginia already has tax credits for low-income housing on a percentage of median housing in the specified area.
They do.
Yeah, Nicole would know that. She's a MAI appraiser out of the Richmond market, and she goes all over the state, and she does a lot of work in that realm. She knows a lot about it.
But it needs to be much more than what it is. That's the thing.
Because I don't even think the ADUs can solve this problem.
No.
No.
The ADUs are too damn expensive to build. And when you have $150,000 into an ADU, you're going to carry a mortgage on that probably, and you're going to want to get some money on that.
So that's what.
Sure.
So that's what prompted the land trust, because out in Seattle, that's important. That's what was happening, and what happened was the folks would go and pay 150, 250 in that marketplace, and then all of a sudden,
You have debt service
no, they have to get foreclosed on.
because they don't have a tenant for
The
it.
tenant's not paying them.
Yeah.
Right, so that's where the land trust comes in and leases the land and takes on that responsibility.
I mean, CLTs, the Community Land Trust, they're popping up all over the country. The Appraisal Institute, we just wrote a class on it because we want appraisers to get trained up on it because it is a different entity within the market.
What are you being kind? You wrote most of it.
I reviewed it. I didn't write it. That was Darwin Ernst out of Montana actually wrote the class, and we reviewed it.
Nice.
Albemarle County, 1.5 million and up closed in the last 12 months, all of 2022. 70 closed. The median sales price was $2 million flat. On the market.
That's the luxury.
On the market.
Yeah,
7
I pulled
days.
1.5 for the city, just the city. Over the last 5 years, there were 28 sales at
Yeah.
1.5 and above, with the high being 4 million.
How much were they all detached or attached?
It's all detached. No,
Yeah.
$4 million off of Rugby.
yeah.
I know. That might be a former governor candidate's house right there. In fact, I'm quite confident that is. This comment's come in here on ADUs. If ADUs are built in the area, it's going to give a different level of housing rental inventory that could create affordability. And that's from Juan, who leaves that comment. I understand that. The problem is the barrier of entry for owning an ADU is expensive, Juan.
So one, I'm part of a national cohort that works on this for the whole country on it, and Jerry's spot on. We've looked at everything from containers to prefabrication, the cost of construction, and a lot of folks don't realize that, less square footage is actually more expensive to build than more square footage on it. It's just more
It's
expensive.
economies of scale.
Well, and then that's it. But if you take a look at it in a Belmont environment, right, and you have in the backyard, unless you've got an alleyway, you've got to lift that ADU, or you've got to go over a house to get there. If it's prefabricated, it just becomes extremely expensive. That's why the land trust model is working so well out west, because we're doing it at cost and so forth. And so on.
Vanessa wants to know, have the policies implemented in Seattle actually made it more affordable, Keith?
It has. That's what I did for 2 weeks while I was waiting on Grandbaby 3 to show up. I toured some of the projects. Affordable in their perspective, right, for their Seattle numbers on that end of it. But it did work because it operated under the land trust model. That was the only ones that I toured, which meant that they couldn't exceed 80% AMI and so forth and so on. So it did work. They were rental environments, not purchase environments, so those no. But it did work.
Good
Not
question.
huge numbers though. I mean, it's to Jerry's point.
Find a builder right now that'll build an ADU for you.
Yeah,
Good luck
no.
with that.
Well, I mean, as far as solving, being a solution to the problem, it's not. It's a very nuanced problem, like anything in real estate. But ADUs work in larger cities that have a lot of older housing stock, where they have zoning that prevents you from having the additional dwelling unit on it. We have that in Charlottesville to a point, but we're such a small market that I don't know that even if we allowed 70% of the properties in the city to have ADU, how much are you really going to fix the problem?
So everybody knows, City of Charlottesville actually has an ADU policy.
Right.
It's 2015 is when it was written. And that was when I was asked to be part of this cohort to try to improve it. They never did anything with it, unfortunately, and hopefully that they'll start tackling that. But to your point, Woody, when I talk about Seattle all the time, and it's really not a fair comparison.
Yeah.
The neighborhood that my daughter lives in Maple Leaf, has hundreds and hundreds of thousands of single-family detached homes, and that's just one neighborhood within the city of that. So it'll help. It'll move the needle a little bit.
If Charlottesville wants to figure out affordability, they need to figure out how to alleviate the tax burden on citizens and to keep them from gentrifying out of the area. If Albemarle County is raising taxes 13% on assessments and the tax rate is unchanged, if it's not lowered, that's going to impact people who are on a fixed budget. And the speculation is the tax rate's going to go up.
Red tape, turn it to green tape. That's the other thing they did out west. If you checked the boxes, that you were guaranteed approval in X number, I think it was 3 weeks.
Where's the budget at right now for Albemarle? As far as, are they having a shortage, overage?
Well, they had a surplus, but right now they have multiple people requesting more schools be built.
Yeah.
And they're already indicating that they're going to have to expand the budget for the next fiscal year. So the speculation is the tax rate's going to go up. And the killer and the kick in the you-know-where is the assessments on average are up 13%. So if they go up 13% and then raise the tax rate, that's going to be a killer right there.
Yeah, you're not going to see a Greene County scenario where people get checks back, that's for sure. But
Right.
as we talk about all the time, this is the first end of the triangle, the assessment. The second part is the budget. And to quote Ned Galloway again, this is the part that you really need to watch. And to Jerry's point, I find it very hard for them to reduce the budget. I think you're going to see the budget go up. I may be wrong, but I think you're going to see the budget go up. And then they set the rate to make sure it equals zero. So to Jerry's point, I think budget's going to go up, or I think rate's going to go up, and folks are going to be paying more cash.
I talked to some folks in the Blenheim area,
Yeah.
and these are folks that have had I wouldn't call them farms. They're like that 15 to 25 acre, 30 acre,
Little farmettes.
farmettes.
Yeah.
Farmettes.
Hobby farms.
Yeah, and they've had them in their family, just been passed on generation to generation. And they're like, the land, it's not like it's making us money. We own the land because this is our family legacy, but we're not utilizing the land to drive revenue. Like here with this building here, every space or square foot we own is monetized in some capacity.
Right.
These folks in that area aren't doing that.
And they're
Well,
not-
there are things available for them, though, like conservation easements
Yeah,
if your
that's about
property's
right,
large
so.
enough, or you put it into a tax
use.
program, land use program like open space or forestal, or even if you're, if you've got a heritage orchard. I mean, some of those properties out there, they have these old apple orchards on them. They're not producing with them. They're too old to be viable, but you can put it into a program, and it does offset your responsibility.
I suggested some of those ideas, not to that depth, and the difficulty was the understanding of all the options that were out there, and the willingness to be open-minded to understand, as opposed to thinking, oh, that's someone out to get me.
Well, and the second part of that always is, because we have this conversation all the time, how is it going to impact my future value? So as an appraiser, let's say I put it in land use. I have this 15 acres, I put it in land use, so those who know, when you're in land use, your tax rate percentage gets cut substantially, so you're paying less cash out of it. Does that impact value?
Land use placement does not, usually. The big problem with land use is that if you sell the property, you can have to pay rollback taxes on it.
Talk about that for a second.
So the new buyer would have to also want to keep it in that same land use program. If they take it out, then all the benefit you've had
Goes back 5 years, if I remember
I
correctly.
believe so, yeah. And you have to be careful with that. So it's really important in these situations that you talk to an experienced realtor, an experienced attorney, an experienced CPA. those three professionals are really going to help you. As an appraiser, I can't give you financial advice, but your CPA certainly can, and an attorney who specializes in doing this type of thing. And there are several here in the area. That's really your best bet, and it's worth the money. It really is.
So here's a takeaway to all
great
the
advice.
real estate agents that may be watching right now, right? In our real estate contract, VAR 600 contract, there's a box to check about rollback taxes. And there's generally a blank line. Any contract I write, I check it, I write, if applicable, shall be paid by seller. It doesn't matter if it's a home or property, you want to make sure you check that box.
Well, and most of the contracts that I dealt with, handled, it just didn't apply.
I put it in every contract, regardless if it's applicable or not, because God only knows you never know what's out there. And we'll save this for another show, but conservation easements and all that's a very different conversation, right? Because that goes with the
yes.
land. And I don't want to get into
Yes.
the weeds on that, but you should know the difference between land use and conversation.
So the one thing I'll say about conservation easement real quickly is that once you do it, it's forever.
There you go. So that could impact sale.
Well, in Albemarle, it doesn't really. In Loudoun County, it really doesn't, because those are the two highest conserved counties in this Commonwealth.
But Flavanna it would.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, if you've got the ability to subdivide and you're in a development corridor, for sure.
I've got a client right now we're trying to work through that did that on 1,000 acres and want to subdivide. I said, you can't. What do you mean I can't? I said, you can't.
Yeah.
So.
How about some closing thoughts here? What do you think of the 2023 market, Nikki, and how the year is going to shape out? We're, crazy 16th of January right now.
Yeah, I think it's challenging. Real estate always is, and especially compared to the last couple of years, I think it's just going to be one of those things where, for those who in real estate as professionals who have had their systems in place, they have their business side of things set out well, they're leveraging where they need to leverage, or they're willing to when they reach certain points, I think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to keep doing what they're doing. They're going to tweak as needed, which is what they've already been doing. They're not going to feel this so much, right? Anyone who doesn't already have that set, they're going to feel that. And then from the consumer side, making sure that you really are working with someone that is that trusted advisor who knows what they're doing, it's really important.
Well said. What do you think, Woody?
I think the market's going to continue to increase as far as the sales prices go. Unless something major in the economy happens, I don't really see much changing. I think buyers and sellers have finally gotten acclimated to where we are with the rates. And, life's going to continue to go on. People need to move. They need to take a new job. They need to do this or do that. I think where we're at is we've taken a lot of the folks that don't necessarily need to buy, but just wanted to change. The COVID market really helped that out because money was so cheap. Now that money's back at it's still an affordable rate by historical perspectives, but now that we're back to a more normalized rate, I think we're just going to continue to see it. And I think Keith's usually right on point with this. The 2018 indication, we were increasing value in 2018. We just weren't doing it to the rate that we've done it the last couple of years.
I agree. Thank you, but I think the volume will be closer to 17, 18. I think the percentage increase will be that. But Jerry, you'll be interested to hear this. I had my first conversation over the weekend. Lake Monticello wanted to sell their house, put their house on the market. They bought it 2.5 years ago. And we sat down around the kitchen table, and at the end of the conversation was they stayed. They decided not to sell because they looked at what their rate was at that point and what was available and what life changes. There's another blessing happening, another child coming along. And they decided to put, which I thought was the right decision, which is going to impact inventory.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Vanessa Parkhill, one comment to close, and then Keith. She says, to truly open the rental market, we are going to have to accept change to the character of our town.
Yeah.
Hopefully a well thought out change, but change nonetheless. For example, instead of developers continuing to build 3-story apartment buildings, should we be encouraging 8 stories in certain areas instead? Like the project plan near the old Kmart. What are those going to look like? When the development area is limited, making use of vertical development has to be considered. It's a good comment right there.
Well, I think
the old Kmart is unfortunately not going to be residential. It's not going to be residential.
And is that in Charlottesville or is that in Albemarle? That's in the urban ring, I think.
I think that is right. I think that's Albemarle County.
It is-
That's across
it's
from
the county.
Stonefield. I think that's Albemarle
It's
County.
county.
So Vanessa's spot on. That's the reason why please help or contribute to Neil Williamson's Free Enterprise Forum. That organization is providing data for everybody and information for everybody. But to your point, when you start looking at the FLUM, there are certain areas that are going to have more than 2 or 3 stories in it that they're going to encourage that. So please stay on top of it, stay in front of it. Vanessa, thank you very much for the comments, and couldn't think of a better way to wrap the show up.
Absolutely. Nikki Chambliss, Woody Fincham, Keith Smith. The show is archived at Real Talk with Keith Smith. We're going to put these slides on the website. Is that right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Awesome. So these data points are archived on realtalkwithkeithsmith.com, and they're actually very digestible and easy to read. I thought you did a great job with those, Keith.
Thank you. It's took us a while. We've done different versions of them, but I think we landed.
These are the best ones.
I think we landed on the right
Yeah.
formula.
Good work today.
Thank you.
Judah, thank you. The I Love Seville show is up in 52 minutes. Thank you for joining us. Take care. Good job, guys.
Thank you, guys.
That was excellent. Woody, you are excellent.
Appreciate it.